Hey guys, what's up? I'm Kit. This is SchizoKitzo. It's time to get crazy. I'm diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. This means that I experience symptoms of schizophrenia, such as delusions and hallucinations, but also symptoms of a mood disorder, such as bipolar or major depression. One of the hallmark symptoms of my illness is psychosis. After all, schizoaffective disorder is a psychotic disorder, so naturally, psychotic disorder, people who have it experience psychosis. But what exactly is psychosis? The big thing is that psychosis involves changes in the perception of reality for the person who is psychotic. Someone who's psychotic might see someone who isn't there or hear someone who is not there. In the diagnosis of psychosis, oh, that's fun to say, diagnosis psychosis, diagnosis psychosis, yeah. There's basically a big triangle, and it's like delusions, hallucinations, and thought disorder. So you kind of have each one on the point of the triangle. You could have 1, 2, or if you're really unlucky, all 3. But what exactly do these things even mean? Well, let's start with hallucinations. So hallucinations, like I said earlier, you might see someone who isn't there or hear someone who isn't there, but you can also taste things, feel things, and smell things that aren't there. So it's not just only for seeing and hearing. It can be those other 3 senses as well. Most commonly, and not surprisingly, hearing voices is the most common hallucination. So delusions are beliefs that are held regardless of facts. So for example, if we're going to go for an extreme, someone might think they are God or an angel. And you can bring up the Bible, and you can bring up like the fact that like there's no like proof of that, you can't actually do supernatural things, but the person who is delusional will not be able to be swayed of their belief, even if all facts say otherwise. Thought disorder. Now, when people think of psychosis, delusions and hallucinations make perfect sense. Like, yes, that's definitely a thing. But the thought disorder part is a thing that a lot of people miss, that little third category. And it basically comes across in a bunch of different ways. Most commonly, it affects your memory, it affects your concentration, and it affects your conversations with people. So like someone who is having a thought disorder like problem would basically jump from one subject to the next with no clear link between the two. And I don't mean like genuinely like, okay, I'm just being random right now. I mean like they literally will stop in the middle of a sentence and start a whole different sentence on a whole nother topic. That's what I'm talking about. The really unfortunate thing is we don't actually know what causes psychosis. And the only way to diagnose it is if you have like a certain clinical evaluation. So like you basically say your symptoms, you say what you're experiencing, and then they diagnose you with it or not. There's no lab test that can be done to diagnose psychosis. It's believed that stressful life events can bring on psychosis if one is prone, and it tends to run in families. Beyond that though, we have no idea what genes contribute to it. We don't know what science really is. We just don't know so much about this. And I also want to make it very clear that psychosis is really scary. It's really confusing. Like, sure, I have a few good voices in my head and I enjoy talking to them like old friends, but for the most part, when I'm like in my really bad episodes where like I can't see straight and I don't know what up is from down and I don't know what's real and what isn't, it's like the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. And a lot of people who are psychotic would say the same thing, that the stuff that they experience in that moment, like questioning reality, is one of the scariest things out there. Like if you do not know what is real and what isn't, like that really messes with your head. And even if someone's like really self-aware, like I consider myself a very self-aware person. I've been in therapy for well over a decade, so I kind of have a pretty good sense of being self-aware. But even with that, knowing that like, okay, I'm hallucinating right now, LOL, or oh my gosh, I'm probably delusional because this makes no factual sense, but I still believe it anyway. Like even with that, it's still really scary because again, I didn't know up from down. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. And it was really scary for me. Treatment is, you guessed it, antipsychotic medication. There's 2 different types of antipsychotic medications. You have the typical antipsychotics or the first generation antipsychotics, and these are basically like, these include drugs like haloperidol or Haldol, or aka that stuff that they chase you down the hall with in the needle in the movies. Then there's also the atypical antipsychotics, or the second generation antipsychotics. So these include things like olanzapine and Abilify. The other big thing is that while you are also on medication, you need to be in therapy as well to deal with your psychotic symptoms. So like For me, example, like I have a really rough time with some of my voices because they tend to be like mean sometimes, and therapy has helped me figure out when to fight back with them, when to talk with them, when to entertain them, and when to ignore them. So therapy has been really useful helping me deal with that, and it helps a lot of people who experience psychosis to deal with their psychotic symptoms. In short, you can't do it with medication alone. What's really interesting though is it's not just people who have schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia spectrum disorders that experience psychosis. People who are bipolar or depressed can also experience psychosis. It's also found in diseases such as late-stage Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. Like, it's not just from psychiatric disorders even. Those who are withdrawing from alcohol or drugs might also experience psychosis, and people with brain injuries are also capable of experiencing it. Another thing is that you can even experience psychosis just as a one-off experience. You can also get it from sleep deprivation. It's also important to note that when someone is being evaluated for psychosis, cultural beliefs and religious beliefs are taken into consideration. So, say you hear the voice of an angel or God within the realm of your religion, that is considered normal and not psychotic. As I filmed this video, psychosis is not its own diagnostic entity, meaning you can't be diagnosed with just psychosis. It's part of a medical or psychiatric condition. But I'm going to cut the video here. All of the sources that I use in this video are linked in the description box down below. And as always, thank you for joining me in making the uncomfortable comfortable. Bye bye.